e-commerce has been around since 94, 95 with the birth of eBay and Amazon. Here we are, pushing 20 years later, new stuff still coming out. And that's what I think is really interesting about cross-border trade and also e-commerce. But what I wanted to start off with is a sort of question, and I think I'll start with you, Twani. Where is the state of the European e-commerce market in terms of Amazon? Where are the big opportunities? Which are the big sites?
This might be a controversial answer, but in a word, Germany. The German Amazon market is significantly larger than even the UK Amazon market by about a third. German Amazon, in sheer numbers alone, is roughly the same size as France, Spain, and Italy all put together. Export to Germany has increased, I think, 40% year on year from England. And from my experience, we've seen the most price fluctuations in the German market compared to the UK, which means that you have items you're not going to make a profit on if you take them to Germany, and you have also items which you could potentially make the highest profit on if you export from here to Germany. One last thing is that if you're using FBA or any other fulfillment services by eBay or Amazon, if you're selling in England, you're warehousing in England, you can open up a German store in a matter of clicks and be selling there without having to worry about logistics or currencies or anything else if you just want to check for viability. I'm not saying it's the best way to do it or the most efficient, but to test viability, you can literally go home tonight, open up a German Amazon store. If you're selling by FBA, by tomorrow morning, you'll see if you get orders or not. It's a legitimate way to move very, very quickly to a new market.
But what struck me is when we were looking at the slides of the Google search was how eBay managed to crank up to the top of and the other marketplaces were cranking up to the top of the listings. I mean, it's eBay and Amazon aren't the only shows in Europe, are they?
Well, they're the biggest ones, and I think there's a definite opportunity for any product to be listed on these platforms and figure out how you can sell through these channels, at the very least, in addition to other channels. But if you look at Poland, for example, Allegro is huge. In Poland, Allegro probably is about 50 to 60% of the entire e-commerce market, and it's a country with a population as large as the UK, where e-commerce is growing strongly as well. So, depending on which country you're looking at, there may be competitors to these platforms that have positioned themselves early on very successfully.
So, I'm going to concentrate on Europe because I think it's easy, because I think it's where to start in a lot of senses. So Germany is big on Amazon. There's other players in Poland like Allegro. What are the real pain points here? There aren't duties, there aren't export tariffs, but where are the pain points? We'll start with that.
Well, look, if I was an online retailer looking at the European markets, the obvious things come to mind straight away, and we've covered them. I mean, Sarah covered them in her presentation earlier about, are my customers going to be able to see my products and understand what it is, with the example of the travel wrap and the poncho thing. Very basic issues like that. I think there are other things though that you could very easily focus on in your approach. I would suggest if I was looking at the European markets, my biggest pain point would be how I'm going to service the customer once I've sold, how I was going to manage returns. If somebody wants to return an item, and they're located in Italy, what on earth do I do? I send a courier to Italy. I mean, and there are systems and services that you can use to kind of cater for that. When it comes to pricing, that's another issue that I think you'd have to cover off. Which currency do you price in? How much do you charge? Do you charge the same as the competition, or do you charge a little bit more? All of these things are relevant questions. If you're starting out in the market, if you're already in the market and you're selling to that market and you've tested it, I would suggest the focus turns very much to how you can do these things more efficiently, and actually create and pull more profit out from that marketplace. I hope that answers the question, kind of.
No.
I think language probably remains within Europe the biggest pain point for the majority of successful e-commerce businesses here in the UK. It's just tough to go into a market where you don't speak the language, where you may have people calling up with questions, and you have difficulties to communicate where, you know, you're prone to have misunderstandings which could impact your feedback scores, etc. So, you know, working with the great solutions that have been developed over the last, again, 3 to 5 years in the language space, I think can give you a big boost. And then a lot of it is kind of overcoming the fear of failure in these markets. But, you know, Amazon is the prime solution for many of these problems. You can list something on Amazon, you can service it through the fulfillment centers in France, Germany, and, you know, across Europe. And there's absolutely no downside in doing that.
I think I would agree. I think language and localization. We know ourselves. When you have the option to buy something from a British website or a European website, you're much more likely to buy it from a European website. And the same is true all over Europe. If you have something on an Austrian website or a British website, the same item, you're not going to beat an Austrian website unless your site or your platform is localized for the language in which you're selling. Amazon and eBay are great examples. There are many others. There's 1 hour translation that will translate your website for you and clone it up in a different language for next to nothing. There are fulfillment services that specifically cater to different languages as opposed to just different locations. Basic things such as currency converters so people pay in their natural currency. They can have postcode searches in their own nationality. I think language and localization is the key. Once your website looks like a native website of the country to which you're selling, you're going to solve 90% of the problems that you're currently having selling across into Europe.
I mean, I found out recently that a great many things when they're delivered in Italy are done on a cash-on-delivery basis. And I was thinking, well, how does this work? Quite literally, when the item arrives, people give the courier the money, and then somehow that's settled up and divvied up in due course. That's also true in the Middle East to a great extent. That's something we absolutely do not have in this country. There are massive amounts of sort of cultural sort of differences. Now, we've got these guys here. I thought we might take some questions if anyone's got anything. Sir?
A reference to Germany being lucrative, or maybe lucrative. Are you referring to, from your experience, are you referring to UK manufactured goods, or it could be any goods, but you are trading from UK?
I'm talking about goods traded both from UK and native German goods. Just numbers alone, Amazon, again, I'm mainly focusing on the marketplaces. The Amazon marketplace in UK was worth 6.9 billion in revenues. In Germany, it was 8.2 billion in revenues. In England, I think about 60 to 70% was English items, British items sold in England. And in Germany, it was about 35%. So 2/3 of the items sold in the German marketplace were not native German goods. So that implies that both from the exporting to Germany, you have a larger advantage because they're more accepting to non-native items, and in the simple fact that there's a larger online market there than there is here. We always consider the UK as the height of technology and commerce in Europe. The truth is, over the last 5 or 6 years, Germans spend more online, and a high percentage of their money goes online than it does in England. So that's why, so again, I'm talking specifically about the Amazon market, which I've been studying now for years now, and I know very well.
Well,
I'm not speaking.
I would add to this. I think, you know, that's where localization is critical again. Germans, as the Italians, and, you know, the Polish, they just don't like using credit cards, and they don't like use debit cards either. So for them to buy something from your web store is something that is really, really tough for a consumer to do, and most don't. And so eBay, Amazon, they have established this credibility to be household names. Everyone trusts Amazon. Everyone trusts eBay. And everyone has given their payment details at some point to either of them. So that's why Amazon and eBay in particular in Germany have totally outgrown the, relatively speaking, the e-commerce market in Germany, and represent a much bigger rate than they would be in the UK, where they're, you know, obviously very big as well. But that's kind of this local knowledge. If you want to go into Germany, you'll be probably much better off going through one of these platforms, just because the web stores are much tougher sale in this country, and you know that's similar to a few other European countries.
So, obviously you've moved Trickers, Mr. Hayden.
Would that be the same if you was using an eBay or Amazon checkout facility on your website? For example, if you was using PayPal, or for example, if you're using Amazon payments on your website, would that give your website more credibility, or do they still lean towards the actual marketplace itself?
Well, yeah, anything. As soon as you kind of, I think, associate yourself with household names, you'll make your website more credible. But you'll still be a website, a URL that few people have heard of before in these countries, and you know you're lacking of credibility compared to these household names. But I would, you know, very highly encourage you, if you want to sell through your web store, which you should do, because you should establish your credibility. So you have to start somewhere, to add review services like Trustpilot and a few others, where consumers can see there are actually 1,000 or 10 or 15 transactions happening per day, per week, per month, and all of these other peers that are buying from this website are happy, because the product that they receive is the product that they were promised. And so I think you have to very, very actively, even more than in the UK, in these countries, work on establishing that trust.
So,
one of the biggest concerns for us is that when shipping goods to Europe is the issue of returns, which one of the gentlemen has mentioned. It's quite expensive to send items to Europe. Is there any advice you can give on how we manage returns in a cost-effective way, for example, on Amazon or eBay?
so this is true, I think nationally or internationally. But also, we're being now encouraged to ship, shall we say, to slightly more dangerous places. Russia, China, the likes there. You know, you know, you hear all sorts of scare stories. I mean, obviously, if the margins are right, high cost items, can it be done? And is it affordable, or is it something where more work needs to be done?
So from a lot of customers that we work with that ship their products overseas, it does depend heavily on the value of the item, of course, that's being shipped. Interestingly, the tack that a lot of them take is you can have that one for free, because the cost of bringing the item back is just too expensive for them. There are local warehousing solutions that can exist, but then you have to make those connections with the companies that can provide those. So that's from my experience of working with a lot of retailers, that their standard answer is, well, depending on the value of the item, you can keep it. Don't get me wrong, if it's a high value item, then they'll pull it back, of course, they'll make the arrangement. I don't know how much the cost is to ship an item back from somewhere like Italy to London, but I'm sure it won't be extremely cheap.
I think it depends.
Yeah.
Anyone here from the audience who's found a good way or made very painful experiences with regards to returns?
I was at something recently, and there was a company called Aramax, who were very strong on international sending and returns, and were waxing lyrical about how marvellous it was all going to be to Russia, but I haven't used them. It was quite convincing.
Was a company sponsored doing a promotion called WN Direct through the
Yes, that's the other one. WN Direct is the other one.
their international returns. Luckily, in touch wood, I don't have any returns, but they do very, very cheap returns. And if you offer free postage, for example, in Germany, the return is something like £3.
Yeah, those are the two companies that I saw speak at whatever it was that I went to a couple of weeks ago. I'll go to many things. Aramax and WN Direct. Any more?
Last one.
You've had so many questions. Let's see if there's anyone else first. No, you're all right. Perfect.
In England and America, you don't care how much they pay to get something for free, like free postage, and they believe it really is free of charge. Do European buyers feel that free postage is an advantage, or do they understand that it's built in and makes no effect whatsoever? Do people like free postage
Are the Europeans price sensitive to postage?
So we've played a lot all over the world with balancing what part of the pricing goes into postage, what part of the pricing goes into the product. It's almost international. If you're offering free delivery and you charge £2 more than a guy that's got, £2 cheaper but has £2 delivery, the free delivery item almost always does better. It's complete. When you think about it, it doesn't make any rational sense. It's completely emotional. We've seen it true we have seen it in every single marketplace that we sell. So now almost as a principle, we'll recommend free shipping, knock your price up by whatever it is that you need to, as long as you can keep it competitive and you're still not several euros over the nearest competition. If your pricing is in a reasonable range, nearly always free delivery is going to sell better than the same item cheaper with paid postage.
Okay, well, we have another hand. Hello, sir.
But doesn't that have the downside of the item? Actually, if the customer wants to return the item, then in essence we're going to actually fund them as well our shipping cost, the shipping cost of the item.
So when you refund, you obviously have to refund the postage.
So that would mean that we make actually a bigger loss on the item.
Every product normally has its own refund rate. I mean, you say you've never had a refund. We see people that have, specifically in some industries like shoe industries, we see refunds of about 10 to 15%. If refunds are a significant cost, and if you know you have a high refund rate, then it's a different question. But if your refunds are not an issue, then offer free postage. But this has to be something you balance based on the product you're selling, how much your actual shipping costs are, and what the refund rate is.
But for international sales and stuff like that, that would be what pricing to sell an item to a different country and then send it back.
Well, I've just learned now that you can do refunds internationally for $3 or £3. So
That's amazing.
it really does depend.
I think we're talking horses for courses there.
Yeah.
Really. I just want to finish up with these guys because we're actually running out of time. When we're sat here in 5 years' time, what are we going to be talking about when it comes to international trade? 5 years hence, what's going to be the big thing then? Will trade with Russia, the BRICS, the civets have been the big news, or are we just still going to be working out how to speak to people in German?
Well, I know that we won't have trucks delivering stuff. We'll have drones, perhaps.
We'll have the drones.
But I think we'll be talking in from a currency angle, which is where my specialism is. We might be talking about digital currencies. So we've all heard of Bitcoin. I think there's space for a tangible and stable currency to come into the fray and act as the global digital currency. I wouldn't be surprised if Amazon, eBay, Google, these organisations actually launch these currencies themselves.
I think in 5 years' time, with the same group here, we'll be speaking about IPOs.
Unfortunately, my answer is not as cool as yours. I'm tempted not to say it now. For me, believe it or not, in 5 years' time we'll be talking about India, we'll be talking about Japan and China. It's where the biggest growth is. It's the biggest untapped market. And in my opinion, the simple fact that this entire conversation has been on expanding to Europe, and in fact the biggest web store in the world currently, growth rate is India, shows that in 3 or 4 years' time we'll be laughing at the fact that we were talking about Germany back in 2014. It's a logistical issue, but every single logistical issue we've been faced with as a world economy so far, we've somehow met and we've somehow beaten. And we're not there yet because we don't yet believe that the market's there, but I think that's going to change in 2 years, let alone 5.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much, Christoph, Deepak and Shmali, and we'll hopefully see you in 5 years' time. So thank you guys. We're not going to take a break, but if you will indulge me for a few minutes, I will be brief. I wanted to talk about eBay which we haven't spoken about, and it won't have an enormous cross-border focus, I'm afraid. There'll be some mentions, but how many of you here are eBay traders, eBay sellers? So we've got quite a number. Anyone here work for eBay Inc? That's good news. I can go ahead. I don't have to do the sanitised version. So I was thinking about eBay and what was the big news for 2013, and I think there were several big ones. And when I say eBay Inc, I'm including PayPal. There were innovations from PayPal. One was called PayPal Here, one was called PayPal Check-in. They were ways of either taking or making payments with your smartphones. So there was that. It's pretty interesting. There was eBay Now, which launched in San Francisco and which is now coming to London, which is with a collection of retailers. You go onto a special website and you can buy for delivery within the hour. So they will have a line-up, a mall, if you like, and they'll do the couriers there. The tracks are premium, about 25 quid, but if you're rolling in it and desperate, it makes a lot of sense. The other thing they did was this click and collect trial. Did you see this? With a selection of sellers, you could actually opt to go and collect your purchase from Argos, your local Argos store, which was pretty big. That went into trial in October, so we're going to wait to see what's happening there. And the other thing is Cassini, which is a really boring issue in a lot of senses, which is related to the new eBay search. So it's a new search system of how people find things. It's called Cassini. eBay named their search systems after NASA satellites. The last one was called Voyager. So the point about all of those is that actually only two of them really relate to the marketplace. So the eBay marketplace itself hasn't seen a great deal of innovation. And now coming into 2014, sort of people are asking, what's the big deal for 2014? And I've got to say, I don't really know. And it's kind of like international espionage, because eBay haven't been saying much. So when people stop saying stuff, you know they're up to something. And I think we're going to have to be really quite vigilant to see what they're coming up with. But I think that there are some trends, and I think there's a theme, and I think there are some clues, which I'm going to talk about. But I just want to look at some of the things we know are coming in 2013, because they've been announced and where they kind of point. So the first big one, which was launched at the end of last year, was picture standards, whereby you had to follow some basic rules to make sure your pictures appeared appropriately. It's a big headache for a lot of sellers. If you've got thousands of items and you have to change all your pictures, it's a faff. But that's coming. New sellers or new items have to comply. There's a bit of grace with people who've got old listings, but that's going to run out soon. So that's the first thing, picture standards. The second thing, and we don't know a great deal about this, is mandatory managed returns. So eBay is actually going to say to some sellers, we don't know who, or some categories, we don't know what. If you are selling and you need a return, you have to use our service, this mandatory return service, at the cost of £4.75. So that's the second thing we know is on the way. The third thing we can assume, I think, is that the click and collect experiment, which was quite low key, with small sellers selling, with a small selection of sellers selling as well, was successful. So I think we're going to see something on the click and collect thing. So there's three things we know are coming. The other thing we know, because eBay are talking about this, and the funny thing is they're talking big about it, but not necessarily doing anything about it, is that they're really talking up cross-border trade. They know that their growth and their penetration into a lot of markets is pretty good. So they're really upping the ante on this one. But as we know, as we've talked about, there are problems here. Number one, incidentally, being the marketplaces itself. eBay does not always make it that easy to sell. There are all sorts of tweaks you need to do. And of course, there's the issues of payments, postage, duties, legalities, and things like that. So, what are the trends? I said there are two trends in the theme. The trends for me are mobile, which is the picture standards, and cross-border trade, because they keep squawking about it, although we haven't seen anything. And the theme, if you like, is eBay are increasingly interfering with your operations. Before, eBay was sort of like the Wild West. You just did what your damn well liked, and you sorted out everything, your postage, your payments, etc. That is just not increasingly the case, because they're already getting involved with pictures, they're already getting involved with returns, and we also know they're getting involved much more keenly than they ever have in the recruitment of sellers. And by that I mean medium and larger retailers. And it used to be that whoever sold on eBay paid the same fees. Now that's no longer the case. And there's also rumours, unsubstantiated rumours, that they might be about to open a whole new website, which is apparently going to be called Plaza, which will only be open to accredited retailers. So that will be their glitzy, new, in-season retail outlet. I don't know if that's true, I don't know if it's coming, but it's one of the rumours out there. We also know that there is a big announcement coming on the 6th, which we don't know what it is. And we know that they've got the spring seller release coming in the next few weeks, which will have big changes. So what's going to happen on eBay in 2014? Who knows? Which is the rather unsatisfactory answer. But what I can say is that if you need to know, you can come to Tamebay, which is my website, tamebay.com, where we'll have all the news, and hopefully we'll be able to let you know. But eBay still remains a big opportunity, but I'm very worried about how it's going for some smaller sellers, and whether eBay perhaps might not even want some of those smaller sellers.